Hello everyone, welcome again to your channel. Thanks for the click. I hope you are doing well. So today, as you can see, we're going to talk about textbook adaptation. And when we talk about textbook, a textbook is one of the most important language teaching materials. And when we talk about textbook, we talk about textbook evaluation or textbook adaptation. We also talk about textbook designers, materials, etc., etc. Now, we have a lot of concepts related to textbooks. We will perhaps talk about that in future, but today we are going to focus on textbook adaptation because all teachers, most of language teachers, if not all of them, use textbook, but sometimes they intend to adapt it, to change something in textbook. Now, a question, do we adapt randomly? The answer is simply no. Why? Because we have some techniques, we have some strategies that we have to follow in adapting a textbook. So adaptation, textbook adaptation is not something that we can do randomly, but rather we have some strategies that we can use in order to adapt our textbooks. Most of the teachers who adapt their textbooks, they adapt it using these strategies, either consciously or unconsciously. This lesson is very important for professional development, for novice teachers, for those who want to apply for teaching profession either in private sector or public sector. So why do we sometimes have to adapt our textbook? This is a question that we have to answer before trying or before thinking about adapting our textbooks. For sure, adaptation or the adaptation of textbooks depends on different reasons. For example, it can be student level. For example, if you come across a certain language item or a component or a text or something that is beyond your student level, we adapt our textbook. Sometimes the time can play a role in adapting textbook. For example, if you have only 1 hour and you have a long text, so for sure you can shrink the text, you can bring another text if you want to can fit in that 1 hour, that you can finish or your student can do in 1 hour. So that's another reason. So we have different reasons why we intend to adapt our textbooks. Now, as I said before, textbooks adaptation is not something we do randomly, but we have some strategies. Now, let's start with number one, which is adding. And when we say adding, which means we add something, okay, we add something to the textbooks. And we have two reasons why we add something to the textbook, either to, we can say, extend, or to expand, okay, to extend or to expand. And when we talk about extending, is for the, we can say, the quantity. It's for the quantity. And when I say the quantity, which means if you are teaching a grammar lesson, for example, and you want your student to practice a lot, and you think that exercises you have in the textbook are not enough, so you bring more. So you bring more for the quantity. You want your student to practice more and more. That's what we mean by extending. So it's all about the quantity. If you have less number of tasks, less number of exercises, and you want more, so that has something to do with the quantity. So you add for the sake of quantity because you want more. But when you talk about extending, that's something to do with the quality, okay, with the quality. So you bring something which is different. Why? Very simply, for quality. Here it is different from the one you have, okay, from the exercises you have. But here are most of the time the same, okay, the same maybe tasks, the same exercises. Here, different. So you bring more that are different from the ones you have in the textbook. For what reason? For the sake of quality, okay? So this is what we mean by adding. So remember, for adding strategy, we have extending and we have expanding. Number two is omission. Omission is when you remove something from the textbook. And here we have two reasons, or we have two types, I should say. We have something like subtracting, and we have another one which is abridging, okay? So we have subtracting and abridging. When we talk about subtracting, it has to do with the quantity, okay? So it has to do with the quantity. It's the same as this. So when you have, for example, the textbook has several, we can say, activities that are the same. Okay, the same. Or for example, in the text you have some exercises, some questions that are the same. For sure you are going to remove this. This is just a kind of quantity. You have more things that are the same, so you remove something. You remove extra things or others that are the same. So this is what you mean by subtracting. Now when we talk about abridging here, remember this, which is the focus, and we can also refer to it as quality. Now when you remove some exercises, some tasks from the textbook for the focus, because you want to focus on something. You don't want others, not very important. You want to focus on this. Sometimes in a reading exercise you are not interested in, for instance, some reference exercises, vocabulary exercises, inferring, etc., but you are going to focus on WH questions. So you are going to focus on that. You are going to remove the others and focus on the WH questions. Okay, so that's what you mean by abridging. So you focus. All right, so this is omission. So simplifying is another strategy which is very important, and it can be considered as modifying. So you modify the items, you modify the course, you modify the text, etc., to be simple, to be easier for students. And here you can reword. For example, you can rewrite. For example, if you have a question or an exercise that seems a little bit difficult, you can for sure rewrite it differently to be simple for your student to understand. So that's what we mean by simplifying, modifying, rewording, to make the language course, the language item, the text, the exercise, the task, whatever, easy for your student. Okay? Reordering, or we can also consider it as reorganizing. So we can call it reordering or reorganizing, as you like. So when we talk about reorganizing or reordering, which means you reorder some activities in the textbooks or some lessons in the textbook. For example, vocabulary, reading, grammar, etc. You can reorder these components and start, for example, with vocabulary, grammar, and reading. So this is just an example of reordering. You can reorder activities, you can reorder exercises, you can reorder paragraphs if it possible. Okay, so that's what we mean by reordering. We reorder because, for example, we want to focus on something, or we want to prioritize something over another, or because of the time. For example, if you think that there is an exercise or a task which is more important, and you think that probably will not reach that activity, so you can start with it. So this is a kind of reordering. So you start with something rather than another. Replacing. You replace something with another. If a text is not appropriate for your student, if a text is more difficult for a student, so you can replace it with another one. If this task is an activity is outdated or probably is not simple for your student, so you can again replace it with another one from your own or from another textbook. So combining, this is another adaptation strategy that you can use, is when you combine two language courses in one. Okay, in one. Combining, as I said, for several reasons. It can be for sake of time, it can be for easiness, or because of your students are a little bit advanced and so on. So these are examples of strategies that you can follow in order to adapt your textbooks if you intend to adapt your textbooks. And for sure, all English language teachers or language teachers in general intend to adapt their textbooks for sure. These are examples of strategies, very important strategies that you can follow or use in order to adapt your textbooks professionally. I hope you benefited from this session. If you have any question or suggestion, don't hesitate to let me know. See you in another lesson. Have a good time and goodbye.